Hi everyone, thanks for being with me. I want to talk about kids, the fact that we treat kids so poorly in our society as if they do not exist. It concerns me that through the child protection system, we have a system that fails to validate the well-being of children, refuses to listen to them, refuses to understand their experiences. I know that many children need to be removed from their families, but I also know that there are many families with the right degree of support that be able to maintain their relationship with their kids and in many cases have their kids remain with them. What I am concerned about is the damage that the system does, the government does, the non-government organisations do when they are supposed to look after and care for children. In this country, in Australia, children are treated extremely poorly by the system for all the reasons that I've just outlined. Children die while in the care of the government. Children are harmed, abused, sexually assaulted, emotionally and psychologically destroyed while in the care of the very people that are supposed to care for them, those people that have removed them from their homes, from places where often they are loved, they are cared for and nurtured. They're removed from those homes to be placed in places where they are ignored and abused. For years we've searched for a solution to this problem and we've never been able to find one. No matter how loudly we've spoken about the way kids are treated by the way child protection workers and particularly social workers care to ignore children's needs, the fact that there is a lot of labelling, categorising, placing people into boxes, refusing to help them to deal with whatever is concerning that family or those parents, ignoring the real issues that sit around families and the dynamics that sit within certain families and how to find appropriate ways to work through them. At the end of the day, whichever way you look at it, children are abused by the very system that is supposed to care for them. So, what are these solutions? Well, I've outlined them many times in many of the videos that I've done for the Child Protection Party and for those that I've done here on my YouTube channel. I've struggled to find a solution that is likely to be accepted by the wider community. In fact, my biggest frustration is also that I've been ignored, that regardless of my experience as a social worker and the length of time I've spent talking to families who have had their children removed, I am ignored. I have not been able to have a voice that I would like to have had to be able to influence effective change. So the question is, why am I making this video? Well, I've just heard a podcast which I found distressing. It was a UK podcast and it was about kids that were not only placed in care but were locked up, had their privileges taken from them, that were housed in accommodation where they were basically prisoners, where they didn't have access to television, didn't have access to the outside world at all, and were not permitted to have visitors. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that that happens here in Australia, but what I am curious about is how do we deal with extremely troubled children? Children who at very early ages decide that life isn't worth living and attempt many suicide attempts. What do we do with children who are what we would say, or what the community would say, are off the rails? How do we provide support for parents and for these children in the most effective possible way, as opposed to these children committing crimes, having mental well-being issues, having addictions, and being sexually promiscuous, and in many cases having children of their own at a very early age. How do we avoid that? How do we create an environment which is going to meet the needs of these kids and their parents? One of the things that we need to do, I think, is think outside the box, to create something that is different, to be aware that we're spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars each on these children, and that with that money we could reinvest it in areas that are going to be more helpful. So the idea I'm going to suggest today is that we think about providing facilities, a home, a house, that not just houses these troubled kids, but also houses the parents. And you might think, well, what's so different about that than just a normal house in which these kids came from in the first instance? Well, let's put in a worker, one particular person who lives with this family on a 24/7 basis, that actually is responsible for and considers the way therapeutic processes that may be used in order to work with this child, that can offer the parents ideas that will help them to parent differently, will provide support and a mentor for the child. Now, something like this might cost something like $200,000, $300,000 a year. I don't know. But if we can find a way that prevents a child from being incarcerated, that we can find a way to improve that child's well-being, to help them to develop social skills so they can interact with the wider community more effectively, if we can help them to develop in such a way that they're able to find meaningful work, maybe even improve their education, then aren't we saving millions of dollars if we're able to do this small thing for these families and for these children? Children aren't born destructive. They aren't born hateful or resentful or afraid. They learn over time, because of their experiences, that sometimes the world they live in is unsafe. They are powerless to deal with it because they don't have the skills in order to manage it, the understandings, or even the language to describe the emotional stress or whatever it is that they're feeling. They can't explain that. So for that period of time, until someone has those skills, they need the help that they need in order to help them get to a stage where they can understand why they feel the way that they do. We know this is a problem for many adults that I work with over the years, that they have failed to find the language to describe the trauma that they've experienced in their lives. As a result of that, their relationships fall apart, their behaviours are erratic and unhelpful, and in many cases, their parenting style is not what it should be. So we need to find a way to work with these kids. We also need to find a way to understand what it's like for children who are in care, how they experience that, whether they understand the reasons why they're in care in the first place. We need to dig deeper. We need to empathise. We need to feel whatever it is that these kids feel. And we need to find solutions that will help them get to a place which is beneficial for them, their parents, and society in which they live. There are ways, I think, by which we can do that. The problem that we have is that many governments or organisations choose to do nothing. They choose to accept the status quo as ineffectual and as denigrating and degrading and pathetic as it is. They refuse to do the work because they're well paid for the work that they do, and then they're not prepared to look for innovative ways by which they could do it differently. They often start from a position whereby they identify the children as being so troubled that they are beyond help, that there is no one within that system that can help them. I'm reminded of a TED talk I saw some years ago about, which was delivered by a young person who now is a social worker but was himself in care. His turning point was when he discovered someone who could work with him. So he had many foster placements. Finally was placed in this foster placement. He got into trouble with the law. He stole a car, I think. And he expected the foster parent to say to him, that's it, over and done with, they're not going to put up with this behaviour anymore. But the foster parent didn't. The foster parent said to him, it doesn't matter what you do, I am never going to give up on you. In that moment, this young person realised that he had some value, that this was someone he could trust, and that he would never behave in the way he had in the past again. What we don't understand is that sometimes it takes a moment. It takes just that bit of thoughtfulness, that bit of consideration, that sense of nurturing, wanting to care for somebody. That's all it takes. And that could turn a young person's life completely around. Not enough people, regretfully, want to do that. Not enough people understand that the message a child needs is so simple, so direct, and so truthful as, I care for you and I'm not going to give up on you. So we could build this house and we could put the family in there. We could put a worker in there that would help them with regard to that child. That's one way. But neither that will work either if the worker isn't someone who's dedicated to caring for and nurturing this child and can mentor to them how one should behave. You know, there is no greater pain that we can deliver to anybody than ignoring how they feel. Every time we ignore a person's emotions, that person is likely to bury themselves further and further into that emotional distress. They're not going to trust anybody to present that emotion to. If they keep getting put down, if they keep getting denigrated or labelled, then they're not going to feel free enough to be able to express how it is that they're feeling. But even then, if they have that one person who can, that one person who can connect with them, we can change their lives forever. I don't believe that there aren't enough of those people around. I think there are. They don't necessarily have to be trained professionals either, even though therapeutically that's probably helpful. But in order to be an appropriate professional in this space, you have to be able to offer those things that I've just talked about. You have to generally care about kids. You have to generally believe that there is a better outcome. And you have to be able to see in those kids the talents and abilities that they innately hold that can change their lives. Just my thoughts. Wondering what you think. Please subscribe to my channel. Contact me in the comments section below. respond by sending me an email if you like to this email address. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care, look after yourselves and be safe.